is indeed it is indeed a pleasure to be here and give you a bird's eye view of many programs and services that we offer, all free of charge. I am going to share my screen, and I'm also going to ask that when you're finished eating, I get to see some faces so that I'm not just looking at a few pictures and a black screen. So here we are going to share this PowerPoint with you from the beginning. This is where we are located when we are physically present. I've, along with many of our counselors, most of our counselors, have been working from home for the past 2 years, as maybe some of you are doing. We're located up at Alameda Padre Serra behind the Riviera Theater, to give you some perspective. Today, I really want to talk to you about some of the long-term services that we've offered in this community for 47 years, and also to talk about some of the new visionary services that we've embarked upon as we've identified new needs around grief, grieving, and planning for end-of-life care. Simply stated, our mission is to provide care to anyone experiencing the impact of a life-threatening illness or grieving the death of a loved one. And I will go on to tell you, we don't have criteria that says you have to have a certain number of months to live, or nor do we need a doctor's order. So anyone can self-refer to our services. And simply stated, our goal is to heal the loneliness of grief and the fear of death. And I'd like to add on to that, and also through our care management program, to connect people to important needed resources. A brief history about Hospice of Santa Barbara. You know, people will say to me, oh, please don't use the hospice word, it's going to scare my loved one. We now associate hospice with death and dying. But years and years ago, certainly from the Middle Ages until the 1960s and 70s, when Dr. Cicely Saunders became so involved and really the founder of the hospice movement, recognizing, acknowledging, and providing supportive services for people who were at end of life. It really was a place that was meant for travelers. So when we think about critically, chronically, and end-of-life situations, those individuals are on a journey, to be sure. The first hospice was actually founded in London by Cicely Saunders in 1967. And we were very close behind here at Hospice of Santa Barbara. So New Haven, Connecticut had the first hospice. We are the second, and we've been around all of this time, yet somewhat silently until I would say the last few decades. If any of you are old enough to recognize the name of Alice Heath, she was an amazing social worker who was indeed also a visionary, and she laid the foundation for starting Hospice of Santa Barbara, originally meant to provide emotional and psychosocial support for anyone with a life-threatening illness or at end of life. Our journey then in 1980 morphed into acknowledging that medical services were an important part. So we were part of the early Medicare demonstration project and expanded our services to go from just the emotional support with licensed social workers to also having a medical model. We realized this was a complex and costly program to run in addition to the emotional support. So in 1990, we actually merged with VNA Hospice, which I think is why to this day, people still get us mixed up with VNA, and we have two totally different missions, which I will talk about. The original founders, as well as the Hospice of Santa Barbara board that remained intact in those VNA days, realized that our true mission was to focus primarily on the social and emotional support of people at end of life. So we went back in 2001 to our original mission. And then VNA continued on their home health model as well as their hospice home health model. So there you see in 2004, we celebrated our 30th anniversary, again, with most of those years being the social and emotional component of end of life. Between 2004 and 2007, Hospice of Santa Barbara, VNA, and I believe Direct Relief International was given a huge amount of funding from a very wealthy donor as part of his estate. And that enabled us to move from the little house on Junipero to the building up on Alameda Padre Serra, which was really created for us. We don't own the building, but have the first floor and a satellite office as we've grown. So that's where we're located. Moving along, Hospice of Santa Barbara was dedicated really to pretty much the city of Santa Barbara and our neighbors in Goleta, but we realized, and certainly the debris flow taught us a lot about crisis and end of life and sudden tragedy. So we expanded our services to Carpinteria and now have an initiative just in Carpinteria to serve the population there. Because of this stereotype of the name Hospice of Santa Barbara, we have named ourselves Compassionate Care of Santa Barbara, hoping to attract more people who really need that strong support during times of emotional crisis with a life-threatening diagnosis. And it really seems to have filled the bill with us expanding our services and getting more clients to come on board. Realizing the demographics of Carpinteria as well as Santa Barbara, we saw an emerging and growing need to outreach to our Spanish-speaking population, of which there is a strong component in CARP. MVMV stands for Mi Vida, Mi Voz, which translated stands for My Life, My Voice. And we have collaborated with a number of Spanish-speaking leaders in the community to help outreach, providing services mostly to our monolingual Spanish-speaking people. So I just want you to know we have quite a number of counselors who are bilingual. So do not hesitate to refer those Spanish-speaking people to us. And then ever in the growth mode, really since the turn of the century, we reached out, and part of that was my coming on board in 2018 with my work with the DASH program, saying people really need to get their plans in order and in writing so that loved ones are not burdened with decisions about critical life-saving care when there's been no discussion. So we applied to the Bauer Foundation, got a grant from them and another grant this year because of our success to reach out into the community and actually for me to go and take programs helping people complete their advanced healthcare directive. So I'm hoping maybe to come back in person next time to do a presentation for retirees and staff. About us, please know all of our services are free of charge. We don't need a doctor's order. We don't take Medicare or any insurance. So what a blessing for someone to be able to be in need for grief counseling and to be able to call us up and have licensed people serving those needs. We have over 100 trained staff, trained volunteers from every walk of life who are saying, I now want to give back by companioning or serving others that are in some form of grief stage. And important to note, service can really begin from us at the point at which someone is given a life-threatening diagnosis. So that can be someone diagnosed with colon cancer or breast cancer, and they're struggling with what treatments do I receive? How is my life going to change? Maybe I'm in the childbearing years and I'm fearful about chemotherapy or radiation. We walk those individuals through those stages until maybe treatment is obtained and a cure remedied. I like to tell the story of the young woman in her early 30s who was diagnosed with breast cancer, recently married, fearful that if she had certain treatments, she would not be able to have children. I am pleased to tell you she came back several years ago with baby in hand and thanked us profusely for the support we gave her. So my point is that we serve people who may go on to get well. We also serve people who may go on to the medical needs of hospice care. So I thought at this point, it would be good to show you the difference, and hopefully all of you got the handouts that I sent to you. The one with the umbrella also is a way of showing how Hospice of Santa Barbara, a counseling model, is different from the medical. So you see left column HSB, right column VNA, and the other two medical hospices. We have no time frame, so we can be referred at the time of diagnosis or as someone is nearing end of life, but not yet qualified for the 6 months. So anytime. For VNA medical, it must be a doctor saying there's a prognosis of 6 months or less, and the doctor must actually write an order. Our services are about building relationships through one-to-one counseling, support groups, and our care management program, patient care services, we call it. Hospice, VNA hospice, very much focused on the physical care because the person probably is in a state of decline. And you'll see there the multidisciplinary teams. As a nurse by background, what is distressing to me is when people and families say, don't talk about hospice care early enough to benefit from all of the wonderful medical support that they can be getting, and they wait till the last week of life. What a burden that is for families. So I hope that I'm not only identifying our services, but how important it is to not put off a physician saying you would so benefit by all the services near end of life. We do a lot with community education and now focused on advanced care planning and continuity of care, as well as connection to resources, and we're free of charge, whereas the medical assisted care, Central Coast Home Health, and VNA, all of whom have a hospice component, are insurance-based and reimbursement because they're providing physical care. VNA is the only of the 3 hospice organizations that provides free care if someone does not have some type of insurance coverage or inadequate insurance. So I want to add my importance to that. Obviously, while we hope that all hospice care is relationship-centered, by the fact we are one-to-one with a person, or maybe with a family, providing expert counseling, it's really very much about companionship. And that is exemplified also by the work of our wonderful volunteers. Our staff licensed, and by the way, we also take trainees. So we have students not only from Antioch and Pacifica, but from other universities who come and do an internship with us. So we've got really an amazing support system with the number of counselors we have. And we consider the patient and the family as important of defining what they're looking for in terms of quality of life, no matter where they enter our services. I'd like to just tell you that one of the neurologists in town who deals much more frequently with Lou Gehrig's disease, you're all familiar with that, he sends a newly diagnosed person to us day one of diagnosis, and we follow that person right to the end. The point at which we believe in working with their physician, that person is at the 6-month point, we will coordinate services with VNA or another provider, and we will still remain involved because we may have had a relationship with that patient and family for 2-3 years, for 8 months, whatever. So what a beautiful gift this is for the family. We serve people with life-threatening diagnosis at the time of diagnosis or any midpoint, anyone anticipating the loss of a loved one. So family members, especially those who are full-time caregivers for their loved ones, reach out to us and we provide support. To those who are dealing with grief and adjusting to the loss of their loved one. So before someone goes into a group for a support group, they will have had one-to-one counseling. So we can do a good match with the people in that group and with the counselor. And we consider the patient and the family the unit of care. So here you can see our services. I did not list the support groups, but I'm here because the support groups have struggled. Zoom isn't the best platform for people to feel connected in such an intimate discussion of death, dying, and loss. But our one-to-one counseling has blossomed. We actually, I can tell you, have had fewer cancellations because people don't have to get dressed, they don't have to get in the car, they don't have to worry about a parking space. So actually our one-to-one counseling has flourished these past 2 years. A brief word about support groups. We have, of all the hospices in town, the most diverse listing of support groups, which I'm hoping this year will get back in full swing. So loss of a spouse, loss of a friend, loss of a loved one, loss of a child, loss due to suicide, loss of a pet, dealing with grief through art or poetry. I think you can see we've tried to be creative, to reach out to people, all of whom go through grief in different ways. To identify our growth over these past years, I just want to show you numbers because I think numbers speak, since I don't have testimonials here. Although the testimonial is me, because yes, I did become a volunteer, but before I became a volunteer, I used hospice services anticipating the grief of my best friend. And I, excuse me, I understand her daughter may be on this Zoom. And I also went after my best friend died. And then along came the diagnosis of dementia for my husband. So I dealt with that and other family members along the way. So that I am now working for hospice is a pretty amazing transition in my life. So you see there, we had 2,200 people in 2007, almost 1,500 attending many, many group sessions. Look at where we were from 2007 to 2020. So 2,500 people to nearly 7,000 adults. We are growing our children's programs. Who of us ever thought or put time into being concerned about children grieving? We are now in 2022 back in all the high schools, all the junior highs, and or middle schools, all the grade schools upon request, and the counselors don't hesitate to call us if they see a child is struggling or is behaviorally inappropriate. They call us for one-to-one. And if there's a sudden death, some of you may remember the death of the youngster at Santa Barbara High who died jumping in the pool. And it was so sudden. We did debrief sessions for not only the students, but the teachers. So we're an extremely valuable resource. Our patient care services department, that's kind of a unique feature that we started back, I'd say around 2010, 12. And we take on referrals of someone with a life-threatening diagnosis, where we actually do social service and care management, connecting these people to resources. And this is where our volunteers come in. So our volunteers may do errands, may do respite care. They may come and sit with the patient while the family is out. We do no medical. So connecting to resources becomes extremely important. Last year, believe it or not, was one of our biggest years, even though we had to do it via telehealth. We're now back in person, thankfully. But in 2020, we had almost 15,000 individual counseling. So from 2,500 in 2007 to 14,000, I think you can see the word is definitely getting out. Group counseling, you see here, children and family. When there's a death of a child or a loved one, sometimes the family needs to be the unit of care. So we might have a session with parents and children, especially if there's a child that's died young. No in-person patient care services. It was all done by phone, but we certainly did provide service. So group numbers there, still sizable given the fact that our offices were closed. Last year, again, a challenging year, no in-person children or patient because we were all locked down. But we still served adults via Zoom counseling. So we're still at a pretty high number there, pushing 15,000, despite the fact everything was done online. We're back to in-person, but let me just show you by these figures. So the light number is 2019, the blue is 2020, and then the goldenrod is last year. There were no enormous dips in our services, despite what we went through. The children was probably the biggest because the schools were closed. So you can see that we continue to grow. By the way, when we moved up to APS, there were 7 employees. There are now 42 employees. So I think you get a picture, and over 100 volunteers. These are our services. Obviously, counseling, emotional support groups are biggest. The care management has been huge this past year because last year we served 145 people diagnosed with COVID, all of whom recovered, I'm happy to say. In some instances, we had families, monolingual, perhaps low income, limited resources, where because of our fundraising and grants, we were able to provide quality of life grants to help them pay their electric bill, to help buy groceries. We had our volunteers picking up and delivering groceries. It was absolutely, I think, really life-saving for a lot of these people. We also have a spiritual care counselor available to sit with people, to just be, to meditate, to pray, whatever it is that the individual is looking for. And my work in community engagement, despite all the downturns, we did quite a number of programs last year in advanced care planning, and we saw that over 200 completed My Care healthcare directives were delivered to cottage. So we've made some pretty incredible inroads. No charge for our services. I think our tagline indeed identifies who we are. We provide compassionate care and are free to anyone, regardless of their means. I'm going to skip over I Have a Friend, which basically was put on hold. We hope at some point in time we'll bring it back. But this was a novel program where a volunteer, a trained volunteer, who themselves lost a loved one as a child, has been paired with a child who also lost a loved one. So someone that lost a parent, now a volunteer, is mentoring and being with that youngster who has also lost a parent or a sibling. We're hoping, as I say, to bring this back. Here's a beautiful example of a hospice mentor volunteer with the mentee. So aside from I Have a Friend, we still do parenting classes for parents after loss. And this can be the loss of a baby, the loss of a child, someone who is lost due to miscarriage. So no time frame on that. Grief is grief. And then we have age-specific support groups. So the little youngsters, the middle age, and the high school in groups. The volunteers who visit patients and who support in a therapeutic way are patient care volunteers. But we consider anyone who is providing support to Hospice of Santa Barbara as volunteers, our trustees, our board of directors, and now our advanced care planning volunteers. So patient care volunteers, that's the care management program. These are some of the services that they provide. And as I say, sometimes it's just sitting with that person while a family member can get out to do their errands or doing errands for them. NODA stands for No One Dies Alone. Unfortunately, this is on hiatus also because this is a program meant to serve people who are in skilled nursing or assisted living and are within the last 2 to 3 days of their life. we will have a series of volunteers to come and sit at their bedside for these individuals who otherwise might die in a nursing home alone. Beautiful program. We hope to restart that once the long-term care services open up. This is about the volunteers that work with me on advanced care planning. They have been a lifesaver. No way could I have gotten 200 completed documents had I not had these people at my side. So they will go to group presentations with me, or if someone can't get out, we're now allowed to go into homes with masks. We'll go there in person and do a one-to-one. We'll do Zoom. We'll meet in the park, whatever it takes. And our goal is to help people get the document completed, not just to talk about it. And the ultimate is fulfilling the need of people to make sure their healthcare decisions are in writing, not just something that was a casual conversation 20 years ago. This is a document that must be honored by all healthcare providers, but they have to have it in their hands in order to do that. And our goal is to make sure that their end of life journey follows their wishes, not happens to be procedures performed that had to be performed because no one knew what the person wanted. So an important decision. We're in the process of starting volunteer training next week. So you see, before we put someone out in the home with someone or even pair them up on Zoom, they have had almost 20 hours of training. I have a friend is someone who's a patient care volunteer and then goes another 2 full days for training. So we sure hope to bring this back. For the advanced care planning volunteers, they undergo 6 hours of intense training on the document. Reaching us is pretty simple. You can talk to your doctor, but you don't need to. You can talk to a friend, refer a neighbor to us, a brother, a sister, a family member who really is struggling with some type of a life-threatening event. Right now in our patient care services, where we're back making visits, we have 154 people that we're helping with connecting to resources, counseling, spiritual care, and volunteers. Here's our number, 563-8820, and our website. I want to give a plug to something creative that we did during the 2020-21 and now continuing to 2022 on a lesser frequency. We host the Illuminate speaker series, which now meets once every other month by well-known national and international speakers who will talk about what the COVID experience has been, the loneliness, the isolation, and about resilience, meditation strategies to help get us through this stage. So go to our website. Last year, we had a number of speakers. I've put on just 2 here. I think a lot of you maybe have read the book or saw the movie Eat, Pray, Love. We also had Roshi Joan Halifax, Frank Ostaseski, Dr. Sunita Puri, palliative care, talking from their perspective what resilience was about during the pandemic. This is our list of speakers this year. It's free. Just go on our website. You do need to register. It's a 1-hour presentation. We had almost 1,000 people tune in to Sharon Salzberg in February. Our speaker in 2 weeks is Amanda Klutz. Her name may be familiar to some of you. She is an actress, her husband an actor, taken ill in his 40s, critically ill with COVID, in ICU, had his leg amputated, only to die shortly thereafter. So she talks about her journey, and she'll be with us on April 20th. So I encourage you to tune in. We've got Kristen Neff and others in the world of mindfulness and meditation also on the list. So I encourage you. I think this will be refreshing, honest, poignant, and probably heartfelt presentation talking about loss from a personal perspective. So I've gone through this pretty quickly, hopefully very factually. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. And now to answer any questions any of you might have. So just